The BSides DC 2016 videos are brought to you by clearedjobs.net and cybersecjobs.com, tools for your next career move, and Antietam Technologies, focusing on advanced cyber detection, analysis, and mitigation.
Alright, good morning everybody. Unfortunately our speaker for the planned talk has not shown up. However, we're going to ask around. There's some interest in our reg system. So this is one of my co-board members, Jim. He built the reg system, engineered the thing completely, and actually we'll be publishing the schematics and build diagrams and everything afterwards. So if anybody wants to hear about how this works, we're going to do that now. And I will hand it off to Jim.
Go start, yeah.
On the top, probably just the top. I think we're going to be something.
I'm going to just throw up some pictures that I've got on there. I don't have any like real pretty good yeah, totally. Okay, so I'm also scheduled to talk about ICS SCADA stuff this afternoon. So, I like to build things. My name is Jim Gilson. I'm an electrical engineer by trade, so I kind of stumbled into cybersecurity a few years ago. Probably going on 15 at this point. We had suffered quite a bit of issues with our reg system the last couple of years for the con. So we decided there had to be a better way. And I took it upon myself to make something that would work. We use BusyConf, which is a site that helps conferences to actually do reg systems. So we send out the barcodes with that, and that ends up giving us a flat text file for our database of like registered attendees. In there, it's just 3 fields. It's one for the code itself, one for the email, and then one for a field that describes what they are. So in our database, we've got like speaker, we've got attendee, and then we've got one like identifiers for each class that we've got, or different things like the CTFs or the different stuff like that. So we had to figure out a way to work with that. We have been using the ConQR system that DerbyCon uses. So the way DerbyCon has it set up is they have a separate Wi-Fi network, and they basically have phones just link into that Wi-Fi network and use the QR reader that's on a phone. We have had problems with that Wi-Fi linking to the reg system previously. The last 2 years we basically had it where it just kind of crapped out and we couldn't do anything. So we ended up deciding that we wanted to do a fully wired system, and because I love kind of tinkering around with things, and I had a whole bunch of Raspberry Pis at home I had, but had no like purpose to do with them, I said, let's try and do a Raspberry Pi project. So this, as many of you have seen, this is the actual box here. Inside, there's a Raspberry Pi 3, basically what I have on here is the Pi hat. So if you actually, let's see. So I actually use the Pi hat, which is up top here, and I knew these would be bumped around quite a bit, or just the possibility of someone yanking on it, or even just sitting in storage, they'll get bumped around and everything. So I wanted to actually solder wires to it instead of just using the little jumper cables that you use onto the proto boards. So I actually soldered onto the Pi hat just so I had something nice and solid. From there, I'm just going to 4 of the GPIO pins, general purpose IO, if you know what that is, and I use it to basically light up these lights. So the way it all works is I actually have the Pi camera board, and the Pi camera board is set up to do motion detection. So the Pi is set up with motion detection, and what it'll do is it takes 2 frames a second. If it detects motion, it'll actually go and save that off to a file in a particular directory. My Python code just sits there and says, is there a new file in that directory? And if it is, I automatically shunt that off to the QR reader code. And there's Python available downloadable code for QR reader stuff. It's actually built in. It's just sudo pip install, I think it's QRcode. It'll do processing of the QR codes. You can either do generation or you can do processing of them. And so I just do that. Now what I found is that the focal length for the camera on the Raspberry Pis is actually about 1 meter. In order to get them to focus properly at around 8 inches, you need to use a lens of some sort. The cheapest, easiest lens is Walmart reading glasses. So, it works. And actually, I found a lot of people doing that online. It's just really simple. They're like $1, or actually, I think these are a lot more. But it's just like, they're plastic lenses. You can drill in them. You don't have to worry about them shattering and stuff. So, this is actually a +3 lens on it to get it, and that focuses really nicely at around 8 inches. So from that, I get a nice clean image, process it through. The QR code in Python, I just submit that QR code to the ConQR server. The server itself is set up to basically act as a DNS master for the system. So whatever DNS it gets, it automatically just processes that into the system. So it doesn't actually care what the HTTP portion of it. It's just looking for the QR code that's submitted as part of that. So it could be foo.blah and it doesn't care. But it processes that QR code. Inside the server, it goes and looks for it in the actual server, in the flat text file. If it finds it, it then writes it out to a registered file, writes that code into a registered file. That way, just in case you're getting multiple people, at least you have a way, because it is development code. I mean, even though it's been out there for a while and Derby's been using it, it's still development code, so it crashes occasionally. But you got a way to back it up. It's not all just in memory in a database or something like that. So, and then what it does is it sends back an HTML response on the return. The original ConQR stuff that DerbyCon uses is a very simple. It's actually it's not even sending back a fully qualified HTML response. It's actually just sending back a text string using HTTP. We actually tweaked it so it sent back a full HTTP or an HTML file coded, and I send back a response in the meta description field in the header that says whether it's registered, whether it's a duplicate, or it's unknown. From that, I get the response back from the server. This guy, what it does is it goes and reads that, interprets the text field, and then it will flip on the LEDs. So the one side of the LEDs, let's see, it is this right side here. That actually is what you were seeing when you'd walk up. It was just a blue light that was telling me the system's up and running, it's good to go. When that one went green, it was saying it got a good QR code, and it was sending a signal to the server. The other side, the red or green one, that was actually saying whether it was a good code is green, a bad code or a duplicate code was red, and we actually had a couple times where it came back as unknown, and that was that was given a yellow LED. But it was actually just a way for us to kind of give a visual. And then I also have the little monitor that you saw next to it. I actually give a visual representation on that monitor as well for the same thing. And so I actually have the image that's being shown here. I display that using Pygame. And then I also overlay on top of that a little box that shows the code and gives me an indication of whether it's good, bad, or unknown. So that's that's generation 1 of this. And as Alex said, I already have the code up on GitHub, and I'll put the design plans, basically these pictures, and then a blog article as well up on GitHub as well, and then we'll publicize it out. Any changes that we made to the ConQR server stuff, we're going to actually send them back to Dave Kennedy and the guys at DerbyCon so they can roll it into their system, because that was actually I started like looking through their code for ConQR, and they're like, to do, add better HTML response. So they were looking for help anyway, and so we figured to help the community out, we're going to just continue to roll this through. So one of the actual things that we found on this for this year that we want to improve is actually, I had some LEDs on the bottom here to help, because I figured it would be dark, or I didn't want to have to worry about the lighting situation. It turned out they were too bright for any phone pretty much. They reflected off the surface, and what would happen is the QR code would get this bright white spot, and it would actually mess up the QR code reader. So what I actually did just temporarily this year, I just taped over with electrical tape. Actually, what I'm going to do for future version is put a little manual switch on it, because paper codes, they actually need more light. And so we were just sitting there with a flashlight and kind of lighting them up, or like taking the tape off, or just so we could get a little bit more light in there. So we'll just have a manual switch. There was thought to try and do some sort of like automated, oh, I'm detecting a spot or something, and it's just we got people standing up there anyway, so just hit a manual switch. And then improving on the server response. So the little screen that pops up, instead of just giving an indication of what they are registered, that they are registered or not registered, things like that, we actually wanted to put an indication of what they're registered for. So, are they a speaker? If they are, put speaker. If they're registering for bro, then put the bro class. Or if they're registered for this class or that class, or they're an attendee, or they're a sponsor, we can put all those kind of indications in there. Since we have it in the database for the ConQR server, we'll literally just have that additional field that we actually process along the way. So, it was actually a pretty fun project. The first one that I built took me probably a couple months to get kind of up and running and debugged, at least to a stable point. And then in terms of the hardware itself, so you may notice that this looks rather like a letter. This white portion here is actually from Joanne Fabrics. It's a Craft J. And then this, of course, is just an electrical box, but one of the big things that I was trying to worry about was non-conductive. So actually what happened was I was originally looking for just a wooden box to put the Raspberry Pi in, about the right size and everything, and it turned out that actually the electrical box from Home Depot was probably the easiest thing to use. And then while I happened to be wandering through the aisles looking for ideas of stuff, I happened to see these J's. I just happened to walk down that particular aisle, and I said, you know what? I was already thinking about having a gooseneck from a lamp, or trying to figure out some way I could do it, but then I didn't want to have it conductive, so I couldn't. So I was trying to figure out some way to do it, and then I happened to stumble past this set of letters, and it was the perfect size and perfect shape and everything. So
It was an interesting project. I had a lot of fun with it. Once I had sort of the design and everything built, it only took me about 6 hours to replicate for the others. But that was like when I had the soldering iron up and hot, and I was like ready to go and had all my tools out and everything. But as I said, it was a kind of a fun project. Yeah. Yeah, because because we have this locked into a particular size, it's only got a certain amount of focal space on it. So the idea would be, yeah, we could have one where we could maybe move it too. That's maybe a possibility of how we could adjust it. We also had, actually over in the speaker sponsor area, their check-in, we had a little tablet. Okay, so that's another thing too, actually. So with these, I don't have it here, but since we were doing a hardwired system, we were trying to figure out ways to get something else that we could use. And we actually had a little, Alex brought his little Nexus tablet, a Nexus 7. And from that, there's a little USB, or like a micro USB to Ethernet adapter that you can get. And so we had that, and that has the normal regular camera that it can use, and the Google designed actual QR reader, so it's a lot more stable than this is. And from that, you could actually like hold it up to a higher distance. So that's another possibility for how we can do it for the future too. We can have more than one of those, or at least one of those sitting around for that kind of case. Since we're dealing with just a flat text file too, we were able to at least register people by hand looking in the text file. Right now, we actually had to manually copy that code into a separate registration file to make sure so when we were actually sitting there, basically, if you had trouble, or forgot your code, you basically came over to where I was sitting with the monitor, and I was able to actually look people up. And so I was just looking up people in that flat text file, just doing a grep on them. And then what I was doing is I was copying their code into a separate just manual.txt file. So after the con, we're probably going to go and make sure that we didn't get too many duplicates in there. But it's just kind of like looking in that extra file for it. But the idea of the QR code being too big, we just probably have to figure out just another method, and I think the tablet seemed to work out okay for that. Or taking a picture of it and just using it on your phone that way too. So, yeah.
Thanks for putting this together on short notice.
No problem. I was kind of like talking to people about it anyway, and so I figured. But yeah, I plan on putting out a full like article about it and instructions and everything, and we'll tweet it out and all. So.
You're talking about DNS. I didn't quite follow that.
Okay, so the server we actually set up with DHCP first. So it's got a DHCP server running, so these guys can just plug in. So the DNS, the way that works in ConQR, I'm not fully sure, but it's sort of set up to automatically redirect any DNS request to this server. And so it doesn't care what the address you're looking for is. So the first part, the HTTP/something/ and then you've got your QR code equals this. So if you actually if you have your code with you, take that and run it take it and run it through a QR scanner, and what you'll see is HTTP BSides DC. I think it's BSides DC reg. And there's no like .org or anything like that. It's just / QR code equals this. So it strips all that out and just and it only really uses that QR code equals this value. So it doesn't care. It could be, as I said, it could be foo.blah, and it doesn't care. It's just looking at any request to DNS. It's redirecting that to the ConQR server Python code and saying, process this as a QR code. Yeah, no problem. There's no other questions. Come on up. I'm sitting at Reg's desk. I'm trying to actually work on the last slide or two of my presentation for this afternoon, but I'm willing to show it to you in more detail, or if you want to come up here, I can show you and ask me afterwards. So, thanks.